Hello and welcome back to the DCD Cloud and Hybrid channel. I'm Alex Dickens, Channel Management Team Lead at DCD, and I'm here to introduce our latest episode as we take a look behind the fence during Digital Realty's facility tour and explore the London Metro Connect. Joining me today, we have two experts from Digital Realty to guide us along our tour. Alex Gibson, Data Centre Manager at Digital Realty, and Chris Woosnam-Savage, Senior Engineer for Advanced Engineering Group at Digital Realty also. So, although I've given you a very brief introduction, I'm sure you both will do a much better job yourselves. So, Alex, I'll start with you. Could you explain a little bit more about your role at Digital Realty and what you're currently working on?
Yeah, of course. My name's Alex Gibson, and I've been with Digital Realty for just over 5 years. I've worked in engineering and operational management roles at a number of Digital Realty's data centres in the UK. My background is in engineering and facilities management, with the past 8 years spent working in data centres. I currently manage operations and lead a team of 25 at our Woking facility.
Brilliant, thank you. And Chris, over to you.
Hey, I'm Chris Woosnam-Savage. Been with Digital Realty for just over 4 years. Started in the solutions engineering team and progressed onto our advanced engineering team. I've been around the data center space for just over 15 years, and my current role is really focused on driving innovation and engineering expertise in meeting our customers' ever-evolving requirements.
Fantastic, thank you. And just to introduce the London Metro Connect a little bit more for those in the audience who aren't familiar, it's obviously one of Digital Realty's big projects around the London area. But Chris, perhaps you could give us a little bit more detail into the respective sites which comprise.
Sure. Yeah. So the Digital Realty Metro Connect product is part of our wider Cross Connect product suite. So that's where interconnection between customers, between all of our facilities within a metropolitan area. So what that really does is enables reliable connectivity to our partners, suppliers, and indeed other Digital Realty customers who are present in our data centers. So this helps reduce network costs, lower latency, and avoids using public networks. And it's simply a service that can be ordered through us. What that really helps us do is to be able to look at various different workloads that customers may have and really select the right facility for the right workload. And then we can utilize that Metro Connect to link between those various workloads to create a seamless sort of interface for you. So with just under 1 million square feet of colo space in the London area, we certainly have a lot of options open to us for different styles of deployments or different requirements.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And to break that down a little bit more, perhaps we could, take a bit of a deep dive into a couple of those key sites. Cloud House to start with, Chris, if you don't mind.
Sure. So, Cloud House is one of our newer facilities in the London Metro. It was brought online in 2020. Cloud House is located in the Docklands, 4 floors of IT space with a total capacity of 4.5 megawatts. The kind of USP for Cloud House is to extend our capabilities in the high connectivity area that is the Docklands. So it's designed to provide more access to connectivity that is already in place at Cloud House. There's an older facility located right next to it that's very strongly connected, but also to Sovereign House, which I don't think needs any introduction. So the electrical infrastructure is as you would expect from Digital Realty. So a minimum of N+1 redundancy throughout the entire system, allowing us to maintain the data center infrastructure without impacting the customer load. So each cabinet receives 2 sources of UPS conditioned power from separate sources. What does make Cloud House a little bit unique is its approach to cooling. So it uses the dock water that is adjacent to the building and passes it through a set of heat exchangers. So this then cools the water loop within the building that then serves the CRAs. And then finally, the raised access floor delivers the cold air to the cabinets. So it provides a very energy efficient cooling system. And there's also the benefit that during that process, there's no water lost. None of it's evaporated. What we take from the dock is returned back to the dock. And with this approach, it's circa 20 times or up to 20 times more efficient than the traditional approach to cooling. So sort of coming back onto the use case I mentioned about connectivity. So Cloud House is approximately around 600 meters from Sovereign House point to point. So it's pretty close. Obviously, Sovereign House has over 200 providers within it, including the cloud on-ramps. What Cloud House helps to do is give you more access to those on-ramps with a greater amount of available power. and indeed itself has over 100 carriers on site, and that includes like private peers, internet exchanges, etc. We obviously have fibre linking the two sites together, but then they also form, as we touched on earlier, that Metro Connect product. So that enables you to connect to our city campus at sub 0.2 milliseconds, and indeed out to Woking at sub 1 millisecond from this same facility. So it's quite helpful.
Brilliant, thank you, Chris. I think you teed up Alex quite nicely there by segueing nicely onto Woking. Alex, what do things look like on the outside of the M25?
So our Woking data centre was built in phases, starting in around 2008. Currently features around 37 megawatts of IT capacity across 20 individual suites of varied capacity, each with dedicated infrastructure. So it's effectively 20 data centres under one roof, each with its own transformers, chillers, and UPS systems in a variety of concurrently maintainable configurations, including distributed redundancy, N plus N, and 2N plus 1 in some of those suites. Network-wise, there's over 20 carriers present on the site. And as Chris mentioned before, carriers in any of our UK data centres can be reached through the London Metro Connect system. So this provides, working obviously with the sub 1 millisecond links into both the Docklands and city campuses with cloud on-ramps. And one of the greatest selling points about Woking is its physical security features, which are quite high up the list for a lot of our both existing and prospective customers.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alex. So just to kind of dig a little bit deeper, now you've kind of given us a bit of a 101 of what the sites look at on the kind of surface and the kind of key features within them. I'd like to, kind of talk a bit more about the reality on the ground, in terms of what a data center facility looks like, after the Gen AI boom. Obviously, we're no strangers to demand surges, but, within the sites, I'd be keen to understand, firstly, how have customer requirements evolved, since the Gen AI boom? Alex?
So in terms of flexibility, I think I mentioned before about Woking effectively being 20 data centres under one roof. It's great because it means we can truly adapt to customer requirements in terms of density, redundancy, and security. We're still seeing enterprise demand for things like traditional open co-location and private standard density cages or suites, but there's a lot of opportunities involving direct liquid cooling and high density solutions, all of which we can accommodate at this site. There's even some untraditional cooling methodologies that we can design solutions for. I think a lot of our customers are on that journey with us at the same time as well, which is really quite exciting.
It's interesting you talk about the journey, as regards to cooling. We in the cooling channel we talk a lot about the hybrid cooling approach. I guess, from your perspective, as we see the trend towards supporting, more, energy intensive workloads, how are customer requirements for, different cooling solutions, changing as well, and indeed how are we keeping up to ensure that those are being met? Also within your facility, you say, multiple different operations, investing in lots of different cooling solutions must be, in practice quite challenging.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's been quite a focus point for us, and certainly working with Chris as a solutions engineer on that we're seeing a lot of timescale kind of challenges. So we can't build to suit every requirement, but in a way we can provision infrastructure that will support both traditional air-cooled deployments and interface with those direct liquid cooling applications and things like that. So it's certainly interesting to see customers' approaches to things, because I don't think there's one standard way of doing anything at the moment. So designing a blank sheet to work with, is probably quite key to making sure that we can turn it around quickly enough to meet that customer's deadlines.
Mhm, mhm. And I presume, with regard to that blank sheet, it's down to that flexibility again. Can we adapt to these changing workloads and sort of adjust course based on what the changing requirements are going to be in the future. Chris, from your perspective, what kind of workloads are you seeing now compared to maybe this time last year or 2 years ago?
Yeah, for sure. Like in the last couple of years, and certainly in the last 12 months, 100%, we've seen an absolute explosion in requests for high capacity, high density deployments across the globe, mainly to train models. So, as these models evolve, they'll be ready for use by inference, which means that the net will get cast much, much wider in terms of, who's actually deploying this. So at the moment, we're seeing it as roughly 85% training load, 15% inference. But as that inference ramps up, there's going to be a big conundrum for companies that want to keep control of that HPC infrastructure that is needed to support their own potential internal AI workloads. And with that AI-enabled application and services, there's such a much bigger mix of hardware required over just your traditional IT. So there's additional storage requirements, additional connectivity requirements. You get into InfiniBand cable limitations on distances. So to handle that kind of broad scope of what that really means for a business is something that is a challenge, and we can see that. But it's trying to kind of ensure that we can support that full breadth of what that infrastructure could look like, and that's sort of absolutely key to what we're looking to do at the moment through what Alex talked through. Is the flexibility of our infrastructure on how we could support these things, but also the capacity and capability to be able to support these as well. So that's kind of key as to where we are at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you. We've obviously discussed the infrastructure and challenges pertaining directly to demand. But I guess on the flip side as well, from a kind of capacity challenge, FlapD is an incredibly capacity constrained market, both when it comes to power, connectivity, things like that. This is the London Metro Connect, right next to a pretty constrained tier one site. And we've obviously got the, AI corridor, developing between London and Cambridge as well. With this demand picture too, how are you kind of negotiating these various challenges and various pressures? I think it's probably quite fair to say there's more pressures now than perhaps there has been within the industry yet.
It helps that we already have available capacity within our existing portfolio to support new higher density deployments that are coming online. We also do a lot of work with our existing customers to ensure that their cooling and power systems are running at optimal efficiency without introducing any undesired risks or potential SLA breaches while we're doing that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And as with any kind of new technology, we obviously have to work out the managing the tech itself, but there's the softer side, I suppose, when it comes to kind of the operational side of things, the management and the visibility. Across your sites, how are you making sure that you're giving customers the information they need to for them to then kind of report onto their boards, their investors, and so on, when it comes to things like sustainability, and to your earlier point, Alex, the heightened requirements for security?
Yeah, in terms of physical security, our Woking site does benefit from a lot of extra physical security features that you wouldn't necessarily see on every data center. Which is top of the list for a lot of our customers. That still does remain ever as important, even though, as you say, technology and density requirements are up there. Security still does remain ever as important.
Brilliant. And Chris, from your side, how are you seeing the security landscape evolve? Both in terms of kind of physical and cyber. As we see HPC proliferate, threats are going to become increasingly sophisticated themselves. What can we do about it?
Sure. So I think obviously we've got dedicated teams that are looking and assessing risks as they're being made aware of them. But we've developed and implemented a cybersecurity risk management process intended to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of our information systems. We utilize the United States National Institute of Standard and Technology Cybersecurity Framework in considering and assessing our process. And we use this framework as a guide to kind of help us identify, assess, and manage sort of any cybersecurity risks relevant to our business.
Fantastic, thank you. So to move the conversation on a little bit, I think it's pertinent to bring sustainability into the conversation and hear about the kind of proactive measures you're taking within the London Metro Connect to drive efficiencies throughout your businesses. Our first panel discussed how we can go about balancing HPC growth and sustainability. But from your perspectives, what's happening in practice at the sites? Alex, perhaps you could start by talking about Woking a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So while the data center began its life 15 years ago, we do a solid life cycle program which takes into account like the vast improvements in plant efficiency in that time. We've recently completed a multi-million pound chiller upgrade in 2023, which has already brought about significant reductions in PUE and ultimately power consumption. And more chiller upgrades underway for 2024, along with the solar panel project, should allow us to generate over 2 megawatts of power on site, which is great, and possibly more. Having just the sheer size of the roof to put all those solar panels on is really a benefit when it comes to that. And it's also worth noting that while we're in the process of upgrading plant, much of the facility already benefits from free cooling enabled chiller plant and really good PUEs already. That's part of where it's been on a bit of a journey already, and so some of those designs already had efficiency and PUE at heart.
Brilliant. And Chris, on the Cloud House side, I know you touched upon the cooling, systems that you're leveraging to great effect, but perhaps you could tease out a few more of the examples Cloud House has been working on.
Sure, yeah, no problem. So, yeah, obviously, Cloud House is making the best use of its surroundings to minimize the power used to support the IT equipment. So that dock water cooling is key in reducing the PUE for the cooling side of it. But by optimizing the IT space as well through the use of aisle containment and then temperature monitoring on a per cabinet basis, matched with variable floor tiles, it really enables us to dial in the cooling setup to ensure that we're only precisely delivering the quantity of cooling required. So it's saving us a lot of energy that is traditionally spent, overcooling a space, because overcooling is always safe. So where we've deployed our tools to monitor what the white space performance is at the cabinet level, we've seen a circa 20% reduction in the energy use in that space, because the adaptations can be made in the white space with those results being seen in real time. So we can review that change, assess its impact, and agree whether that change was a positive change or not. So that's really kind of helped us to kind of move that efficiency drive from an operator to just try and be more cognizant towards, at the end of the day, it's the customers who drive the PUE more than us. So it's helping us to help the customers lower that PUE.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting, use case of how to cool sustainably, especially in a very, geographically very constrained market, both in terms of, the physical space being at a limit, but also, power and things like that. For, HPC workloads, particularly in these markets, will, sort of approaches to cooling, like using, river cooling, be the kind of only logical solution if we want to drive efficiencies, do you think, Chris?
So, I mean, Alex touched on it a little bit. The only thing at the moment that is a slight frustration in this DLC kind of future market is the lack of standards. We are certainly seeing a lot of prospective designs come out for DLC equipment, which looks very positive from a sustainability point of view. We're talking warmer water temperatures, which means more free air economization, and that's certainly something we are looking to take advantage of, and lower our PUEs within our facilities. And certainly, I'd like to say it's definitely going to go that way, but there is still a slight nervousness in the industry of, it only takes one to go for a lower value, and then others may follow. So certainly, I would say on the horizon, a vast increase in free air economization should be taking place in the data center industry, as long as all the OEM vendors can agree that that's the path they want to take. So, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And we've spoken, quite a lot about these sustainability, these efficiency wins, specifically through, optimization and infrastructure upgrades. But of course, there's always the kind of economic factors which will drive people along. Surely, in becoming more efficient, we can, and you've probably seen it, in reality, pass those cost reductions onto customers.
Yeah, 100%. Like from our perspective, the PUE, we want to minimize it as much as possible, and therefore the utilization of electricity goes down, therefore customers' bill goes down. So either directly through a PUE pass through, where the customer just pays for the PUE as it is, or indeed if it's a kind of all in one contract, then obviously as that PUE comes down, we can afford a better rate as well. So certainly that's the intention, is to pass on any savings that we get through PUE improvements onto our customers.
again, the flexibility of our outer London sites really do lend themselves to so many different applications, but it's always going to be a challenge to balance rapidly evolving space and capacity requirements. We have had to change our thinking over the years about how we manage that. Without stating the obvious, high density and high performance compute solutions need less space and more power, and nobody wants to end up with loads of space and no power. So, I mean, a big part of that is that's where our solutions engineers, like my colleague Chris, really come into their own, and the ability to innovate at pace for our customers can be really important when it comes to choosing their service partners.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've not got too much time left, so I want to spend a bit of time just digging a little bit deeper. We keep talking about flexibility, so I'm just keen to kind of sound out a few kind of key factors when looking at flexibility and agility in managing high density workloads. I know we've spoken about managing the kind of complex and evolving requirements of customers, in multi-tenant environments, but perhaps you could both kind of break it down for me, in a little bit more detail, looking through the design, build and operate lenses. Obviously, we've got quite a lot of different people tuning into this broadcast today, so they all have slightly different issues. Perhaps you want to kind of kick off, Alex?
So obviously, yeah, in a multi-tenanted environment like Woking, you might have one customer that wants an 80 kilowatt rack, and another one that wants a 20 kilowatt rack or even a 10 kilowatt rack, and we have to be able to adapt to those different requirements. It's also interesting from another perspective. A lot of customers have different expectations of what they're looking at in a multi-tenanted environment. A lot of them, we've seen them come from their owned facilities, and they've decided it makes more sense to come with an operator like Digital Realty. And how much control do they want over their equipment? How much visibility do they want? What levels of security? Obviously, if someone needs a private cage for their equipment, then it's going to be a slightly different cost model to if they're in an open co-location environment, for instance. And then obviously that then brings about those different workloads that they're doing, and how close do they need to be to even other customers at that point. We've certainly been speaking to some service providers, for example, that where they need to be able to have customers co-located close to them, which presents another challenge altogether. But as I said sort of a couple of times, having that flexibility really does benefit us in that scenario.
Yeah, and as Alex was mentioning, I think the key is to be flexible with the cabinet density. So, we do still see requests for, cabinets in the 2 to 6 kilowatt range, but then we also see requests for the 80 to 90 kilowatt range. So it's how we can flexibly adapt to those, vastly different requirements in terms of power and cooling, and how those two can play nicely in the same space. So, for us personally, it has to be the availability of water for DLC or immersion equipment to transport the heat away. But it's also really following the best practices that are, very old these days. So, aisle containment, cabinet blanking, floor voids that are significantly free of obstructions. So it is very new and very different at the moment, but I think there's also still a lot of value in just thinking about the basics as well of how that can operate. And with DLC especially, and immersion for that matter, they can play very nicely in the same space as a 4 to 10 kilowatt deployment. That shouldn't impact each other. So I think that's the key, is we have to remain flexible and adaptable to the new requirements.
Brilliant, thank you. Out of interest, Alex, you mentioned earlier on that the Woking site, took a modular approach to its deployment. For supporting high density workloads, for scaling in line with this demand, is modularity going to be kind of the sort of the right approach going forward, or at least a key approach to support the build out of the market, especially in these kind of capacity constrained areas? Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a key part of that, and I think the ability for those emerging technologies and emerging kind of brands and ways of doing things is going to be the ability for them to come to us and say, look, we need to be able to deploy our equipment in your facility, We can't hang around for 6 months to a year for you to build a bespoke solution or whatever that fits exactly to our requirements. So actually, for us to be able to turn around and say, yeah, we've got ready to go spaces that we can adapt at pace to work with your equipment and your methodology. It's going to be key to us being able to not only be successful in ourselves, but to really work with those customers, those providers that are effectively part of our ecosystem, for want of a better word.
Brilliant, thank you. And just to kind of draw things to a close, your colleagues will be back in a moment to continue the conversation in the next episode, which will explore involving in with higher density workloads. So digging a little bit deeper into this. But I'm just keen to get kind of the sense for both of you. What kind of evolution has there been in terms of the pain points or the FAQs from customers? Again, sort of looking at sort of pre-Gen AI boom and now, what kind of key information would you kind of want to say, hey, this is a common misconception, or this is worth a bit more consideration as we kind of go into 2024?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of customers with a lot of varied requirements, and one thing I would say is just don't be scared of us. People like myself and Chris, we can work with you. We can sit down and have a chat. Kind of a no obligation. I don't want to say no obligation quote, but we can talk through the different solutions that are available. And different things we can do, and even suiting a variety of different densities within the same space. That whilst you might be considering as a business, do you need to put all of your compute into high density or to high performance? No, you don't have to, but you can, and you can put some of it into high performance, high density solutions, and you can put some of it into standard density compute environments.
Brilliant. Flexibility is key.
Absolutely.
Well, that does conclude our Digital Realty facility tour. Chris, Alex, thank you so much for jumping on. It's been fantastic to hear from you. To our audience, thank you for tuning in. If you did miss anything, this episode will be available on demand shortly. And of course, if you have any questions for our speakers, or Digital Realty or the DCD team, we would love to hear from you. Make sure you subscribe to join us every month here on the Cloud and Hybrid channel, and we look forward to welcoming you back in a few minutes for our final episode of the facility tour. Thank you.